Hello and welcome to another fully live Q&A stream of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today, instead of our usual host Alex, we have the Squatch knower himself, Michael. Michael, thank you for coming in from the cryptozoology wilds and contributing your expertise today.
Indeed.
If you have any questions about cryptozoology, not cryptocurrency, but cryptozoology, Michael is also our resident expert.
Indeed.
Michael, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Yes. So we are, of course, live today. If you are seeing us on the Hack5 channel, the Security Forward channel, on the Varonis LinkedIn, you can post questions in the chat. And in response to our first question, yes, it is beginner friendly. So if you're a beginner and you have some questions about hacking careers, maybe some news that has come out recently, we are here to answer it. So it's good to see everyone. And Michael, what have you been up to this week?
Mostly video production stuff. I'm working on another OMG cable episode about forwarding emails from a Gmail account. So definitely very spooky. So y'all can eagerly anticipate the arrival of that video.
Yeah, so some of you might have forgotten, but Michael is a content creator as well. He's here on the Hack5 channel. So I think that, where is it? Over on my screen, you can see Michael's episode on grabbing Wi-Fi passwords with the OMG cable. And then also you came out with the one, no, that's Nick, of create your first OMG payload. So two different videos about the OMG cable, which is pretty exciting and cool because the OMG cable is by far, in my opinion anyway, the sneakiest and easiest to use Hack5 tool for beginners that has a really cool impact and looks like something that you would never suspect is a malicious tool. A lot of other Hack5 tools are great, but they do, you know, aside from the USB rubber ducky, look a little weird for a beginner to find plugged into their computer maybe.
Well, like I said in my video, like the thing I love about the OMG cable is it just looks like something that would come out of the mind of like a Hollywood hacker. Like it you can't distinguish it from a normal cable. Like I've legitimately accidentally started to plug it in multiple times already. So
yeah, no, really good content. So look forward to more cable content from Michael covering the very cool OMG cable and some payloads you can do with it. As for me, well, all right, over on my screen, there was this article on CNBC that a lot of people ended up taking a look at, and I was quoted in it. So I talked a little bit about different ways that you could find hidden cameras, and we did an episode on this on Hack5, where we showed how you can use Wireshark to track down hidden cameras. And I got to talk a little bit about those like weird spy detectors, as well as Wiggle Wi-Fi, which is a tool you can use to track down different devices that might be generating their own access point. And people are coming out of the woodwork that have seen this. My doctor saw it. My dentist saw it. Our old editor at Nullbyte read it and reached out to me yesterday. So lots of people have read this article. It's really, really cool to be quoted in it, and maybe I'll do that more often. We have a great PR person, Rachel, at Varonis, who set up this interview and made it super easy for me as well. So I have to say, Varonis makes it super easy sometimes for me to be able to do really cool things like this, like give regular people advice on how to find sneaky spy cameras and, you know, what they kind of look like. So this was really sweet. I had a good time doing it. I did it during RSA, and yeah, big shout out to Rachel at Varonis for helping me set this up. Because like my parents have seen it, like everybody's seen this article. It was really, really cool. So if you read this article too, then yeah, it was really fun to do, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I just got shipping confirmation today on this. Michael, do you know what this is?
Is the Raspberry Pi Pico W, the microcontroller wireless version?
Yeah, so instead of like the Pi Zero W, which looks incredibly similar if you are a beginner, this is the Pi Pico W. So this is not a full-on computer. This is a microcontroller. And what's interesting here is it's two different microcontrollers stuck on a board. So one of them is for connecting to via USB, and the second one is for like a Wi-Fi coprocessor. So some people think this is really awesome and really cool, and there will be tons of built-in support, and it also is pin compatible with the old version. So you can just instantly upgrade old projects and be able to make them IoT compatible. I'm pretty excited about this, but I also work a lot with the ESP32, and there's so many different flavors of that right now that a lot of them actually work as well or better than this. So, you know, there's a lot of back and forth, but most people can agree that because Raspberry Pi has such a big brand, that this is definitely going to have a lot of support for it, and it's going to be very popular. So I got 4 of them, and they're now shipping
Nice.
from CanaKit. So CanaKit has been really cool for us before. We've often bought like Raspberry Pis as they come out from them. So hopefully within a week or so, I will have one of these Raspberry Pi Pico Ws, which I'm really excited to mess around with. And I know also the creator of the Pico Ducky is also working on updating this so that they have a platform that has a Wi-Fi interface as well. So lots of really cool stuff coming out from this microcontroller. If you have any questions about it, I don't know a ton about it because I don't have my hands on it yet, but feel free to ask them.
Speaking of Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi questions, we do have a Wi-Fi question for you.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Is it possible to hack WPA2 nowadays? Is it a waste of time, or what do you think about that?
So, okay, whenever somebody asks if it's possible to hack something, they first need to tell me exactly what they want to do. And in this case, I'm assuming that they want to break into the Wi-Fi network. Okay, cool. If you want to get the network password, then yes, it is possible to break in, but not in some like super automated way. The way to do this is first to look at whether or not there's an underlying vulnerability with the router. So if it has some of these convenience features turned on, then there's a couple different scripts that can let you break in like less than 30 seconds. And that's really what I would try first, is see if the router has this vulnerability. I'd say like 30% of routers will have this, and then for those 30%, it's game over. For the rest of them, you can next audit to see whether or not there's a weak password, which is the traditional kind of password cracking that we all know and love. But there's new techniques now where there doesn't even need to be someone connected to the network in order to get a hash. So you could just have a network all by itself, get a hash for the password, and then crack it. And if it's a weak password, you can get that for, let's say, another like 40% of networks. For the remaining amount, we can just do phishing. And there's lots of different ways we can cut off someone's Wi-Fi connection and then create a fake network that looks like it's their router getting an update or something and get that remaining percentage that we couldn't get with the other attacks. So Wi-Fi hacking is a kind of a process. There's a bunch of different tools you can pull out and use one by one. So starting with, just abusing underlying convenience features, moving on to password brute forcing, and then finally doing password phishing is my preferred attack against these sorts of networks. And frankly, that works really well because people don't know how their router updates all the time, and it's pretty easy to trick them into accidentally putting their password into something that seems like it's just a simple router update.
And then there was a person having a question. Can you clear up the fact about, basically in a previous video I had mentioned the OMG cable hacking the iPhone. That video has since been taken down and replaced. My current understanding is that so the lightning connector is not an active end. So I was incorrect in stating that you could hack it in that way. But if you did have a dongle or some other connector to connect to an iPhone through, say, like a USB-C to lightning connector, then you could still use it as a keyboard and still perform an HID attack. And additionally, it can still hack other Apple products, such as MacBooks or tablets that have USB-C connectors. So I hope that clarifies that question.
You're just a dongle away. So all you need is a USB-C to lightning adapter, and boom, you're in business. So it not by itself would be the more accurate answer, but with the addition of like a $10 adapter, you should be good to go.
And then back to the Wi-Fi thing. Rainbow crack. Basically, I think they're saying rainbow tables. Is that a thing for WPA2?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. What was the question?
Is there a way possible to crack WPA2 hashes with rainbow crack?
So I don't know what rainbow crack is, but if it's using rainbow tables, then yes, you just would need a lot of storage space. So the way that rainbow tables work is they pre-compute the keys, and then they use it. They basically use a lot of storage space in order to store their pre-computed keys, and then it searches through them very quickly. So it's more like it's an attack where you use a bunch of space in order to be efficient with speed. So it's wasteful of space, but if you have it, then it should be fine. So if that's the kind of attack you're talking about, then that's really the trade-off you're making. I don't really see them very often anymore because frankly, it's so easy to just get like an AWS instance or something that has like adequate GPU power to just burn through stuff, or even abuse like Google Colab in order to do the same thing. So because there's free options out there or really cheap options out there, I don't see rainbow tables as much.
Okay. And then another question here is, what is Michael's channel called? I don't have...
Michael's Minute.
Okay.
Michael's Minds.
I certainly have, a YouTube account, but I don't upload videos there. You can see videos of me up here on Security Forward. So if you want to see more videos with me, go to Security Forward channel, and we have some older videos with me in those.
Minutes with Michael.
Okay.
I thought some of the if any of you have ideas for any channel for Michael that's better than Michael's Moment or Minutes with Michael, please drop them into the chat. I would love to see them. All right, so one other thing that I've posted on Twitter is I got a drone a while ago, and I've crashed it many times, but I managed to avoid it this time. And if you look over on my screen, this is the latest time that I almost crashed my drone directly into a tree. So if you're keeping track, that is now, I think 6 or 7 accidents or near accidents. A couple people said that this looked like it was a render, but it is actually not. This is just where we live, and it looked nice. So if you are waiting for me to make any progress when it comes to like drone flying and getting better at avoiding obstacles and not crashing, this little encounter with the tree right here, yeah, that's not going to go well for me over time.
See,
so
this is why I can't leave you
tuned.
unattended. I swear. You keep going flying, you're going to crash that drone. What will this be? 5 times? Do I need to get you a trophy?
Eventually. And then I just want to wish everyone a late happy 4th of July. We created a towable artillery cannon on a boogie board and used it to trick a bunch of people who thought they were going to see a fireworks show from the water into thinking it was starting multiple times. And they all cheered for us, not knowing that it was instead just a boogie board that had been weaponized into a mortar barge.
I am really proud of that redneck engineering.
This was actually Michael's idea. So, and yeah, so truly incredible and really something worth celebrating. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. But yeah, actually, there was a couple questions for you as well, Michael.
Oh, I have another question.
All right,
too.
go for it.
Okay, can you explain how SQL injection works? Do you want to give the executive summary, or I can attempt to?
Go ahead.
Okay, so essentially, SQL is like a database server that works behind the scenes for a lot of websites. So certain forms, say like you're putting in your username and password on a website, those might reference an SQL database. If it's left vulnerable, if they don't strip it properly, then by injecting things like quote marks and stuff like that, you can put code into that SQL database as if you were an administrator or had whatever privilege that database has. So essentially, you'll see those strings. It'll start with like a single quote, and then it'll make a true statement, and then it'll evaluate to true, and so it'll execute this bit of code. That's about as much as I understand off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a pretty good description. It's basically, yeah, unsanitized code that can go through and end up digging up more information than it's supposed to, or inject something that it's not supposed to.
Yeah, so usually a common vulnerability is like dumping the entire database or something like that.
There's a lot of good questions in the chat, so keep the excellent questions coming, please. Here's one that's how do you identify vulnerabilities without using a vulnerability scanner? It really depends. If you're talking about web applications, there are automated scanners. And that will tend to be the thing that will be really fast if you want to just blaze through and then get a bunch of lists. What I would personally say is my experience with using OWASP Zap is I'll open a web application that I think might be vulnerable, and then I'll do something like attempt to log in, and maybe try to like reset my token or do some of the security features around authentication, because that's my favorite stuff when it comes to finding like vulnerabilities in web applications. And I will look for behavior that looks buggy. Like basically I'll look through the responses and everything going back and forth and try to find things that look like they're off, or they might not be like implemented properly. And I will look for the kinds of things that I know, like maybe not properly protecting against brute forcing or something like that. That's basically a game over for allowing me to just take a whack at this web server and attack it as much as I want. So yeah, I would say like knowing the different vulnerabilities you're looking for and starting to look for signs of it when you're using the website normally is how I would start without using an actual scanner. I would also say OWASP Zap also has a web browser that has an overlay that will find vulnerabilities automatically as you go through and use the website. So it's not really like an active like scanner. It's looking over your shoulder as you're using the website, looking at the request and identifying issues autonomously and then alerting you. So I think OWASP's app is frankly amazing for that because it's not running an automated scan. It's just looking over your shoulder and telling you when there's something that stands out. So if you don't know what you're looking for yet, maybe it helps you find it.
Okay, so I have another question here, which is, which password list is the best for that? And over on my screen, I have pretty good reference here is Daniel Miesler's
Sec lists.
GitHub page sec lists. I think the one you like the most is like the 10 million password top list, but there's several other lists here. Essentially, that's just like the 10 million most commonly found passwords from data breaches and stuff like that. So that's pretty good sample size, and that's going to get, what would you say, like 30% of passwords, maybe something less, something around there, maybe.
I would say if you use breached passwords, so if you're
Yeah.
using like combined lists of breached passwords that have the duplicates stripped, you can expect to crack like around 30%. Yeah. If you use something more fancy, like a distributed distributed list of crackers or something, then like you might be able to get slightly better success by going with larger lists. But yeah, I would say like you can expect about 30% in most of the time, which is pretty good if you have a large enough sample size. So
Yeah. Okay, we can go away from
all right,
this
here's
thing.
another one. What is Black Hat and or DEF CON advice? So currently this year, my advice for Black Hat is don't get COVID because it seems like they're not going to be masking, which is insane to me. It looks like DEF CON will be, so that's great. I would say when it comes to DEF CON, don't join the Wi-Fi. And in fact, turn off all that signal stuff on your phone. Like put it all, like, doesn't need to be in airplane mode, but maybe at least just turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth while you're there, because you're going to be seeing a lot of very smart people demoing tools that are going to be attacking Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So if you don't want to participate or be cannon fodder, then you should probably turn that stuff off and be pretty serious about using a VPN. So like get a VPN you trust, and while you're at the conference, make sure that your data connection is going through the VPN. That will help. It won't fix everything, but it will certainly be better than leaving your phone with the Wi-Fi on and having it connect to random rogue networks that have the same name as networks you've connected to in the past, which will happen. You'll look down at your phone and realize that it's been on some random Wi-Fi network from a coffee shop that you went to 2 years ago that's stored in your phone. And you'll be like, huh, that coffee shop, I didn't know that there was one near here. But instead it's a Wi-Fi pineapple someone brought. So I don't mean to like scare people. I'm just saying like there's common sense things you can do to keep yourself and your devices secure while you are at a hacker conference. And one of them is definitely taking the step of turning off interfaces like the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth.
Yeah, don't plug into random cables. Basically, just be mildly paranoid about everything and you'll be fine. Okay, so I have another question here.
All right.
Which is, how do you identify the router?
I don't understand this question.
So I'm just assuming they're saying like, okay, I've joined a network and I want to check the router. Like, so normally it's going to be some default IP address 192.168.1.1. If you use a scanner like Fing on your phone, that'll automatically identify the router. Also, I'm going to add a little nuance to this question and separate wireless access points from routers. Apps like Fing or other network scanners are typically going to be capable of identifying wireless access points as well, in case you wanted to try to access those.
Okay, so let me answer this question without scanning. So like often if you're on a computer, you need to know the network range in order to perform a scan. So if you're doing like Nmap or something and you don't know the network range of the network you're on, you're going to have a bad time. So there's a little cheat. On Linux and macOS, there's an application called IPCalc. And what you can do is just do like ifconfig or IPA in order to get your current IP address on the network. That'll give you, like 192.168.149 or something. And that's your IP address. You can type IPCalc and then drop in your IP address and it will give you the whole network range, the highest network, the lowest network. And then if you take the lowest network address and punch it into a browser, most of the time that's the router. So like if I'm on an unknown network, I'll just get my IP address, type IPCalc, and then, whatever my IP address is, and then take the lowest range and then just put that into the browser. And I'd say like 99% of the time, that is the router, because it will usually be the lowest IP address in the whole range because it's the first one that's registered because it's itself. So that's my little trick for finding, without scanning, the most likely place where the router is going to be sitting on a network. And most of the time, if you're in a coffee shop or something, you do that. Just get your IP address, get the lowest range, type it in. Like, it'll just try to connect you to their router. unless they have it set up to deliberately segment you from that. So it's always good to scan because there might be other cool and interesting things. But the other thing that's cool about IP calc is it will give you the network range. So it'll be like 192.168.0/24 or whatever. And you can just copy that and put that at the end of Nmap, and boom, it'll scan everything in that range. So if you're new at networking and you don't know how to calculate a network range, then that's the best way to find the router, in my opinion. Cheating with IP calc.
So are there any adapters proven to work? I'm assuming Wi-Fi adapters is what this person is talking about. Do you want to talk about your favorite Alpha and Panda layer?
Yeah, so we have two different things that we like for different brands that we like for Wi-Fi hacking. The first one is over on my screen. It's Alpha Wireless, and Alpha is the best. They've given us access to a lot of their gear. We've tested it, and it works with Kali Linux. It's really good for hacking. And it's just like a very excellent brand. They even have a section of their website that just literally says Kali Linux compatible, meaning they've done the research to make sure that every single one of these products is going to work with Kali Linux or Parrot Security OS. And that's really cool. My favorite, as I always say, is the Tube UN and the Tube UNA. These are the craziest wireless network adapters. They are only compatible with a couple different types of antennas, but they are all huge. So if you need some serious range, the Tube UN and the Tube UNA are by far my favorite. They're also not subtle because they're designed to be mounted on boats. So if you are looking for a subtle, like tiny wireless network adapter, then let's see. There's some little guys here. Like this one looks like a USB thumb drive, but it's dual band, so you can hack 5 gigahertz with it. That's pretty cool, right? So there's some of these that are a little bit more like standoffish or stand out than others. This one, for example, will probably get you spoken to if you have these huge 2 antennas sticking out of a network adapter at a coffee shop. If you've got more than one of these, then someone might come talk to you. That actually happened to me one time. So that's it for Alpha Wireless. Michael, do you have any of the Panda Wireless ones?
There's the one that looks like bullhorns. I don't remember the name of it. Yeah, I think it's the one you're pulling up.
Yeah, let me see. So Panda Wireless is another brand that I really like.
I could also just
go
over there and grab one.
I'll just pull it up. So for some reason, it looks like the easiest way to find them is through their Amazon store. So if you just look for Kali Linux compatible wireless network adapters, most of the time it ends up bringing up Panda Wireless. Is this it? No, I don't even know what this is. There's a lot of weird brands around this whole thing, and we actually used to be in touch with Panda Wireless. We were literally emailing them directly because they were based in California and not that far from us. But kind of lost touch with them. So that's why we tend to refer people towards Alpha Wireless or Alpha, just because their stuff is really good. They're super responsive. Panda's great and cheap. And a lot of these, like the PAU09 and the PAU07, a lot of these are really good wireless network adapters that are compatible with Kali Linux. But I would just say the support is better with Alpha, and I generally prefer their products. So both of them will completely work, and they're my favorite brands. I just like Alpha a little bit better. Although I will say they've sent us a lot of free stuff, and we've gotten to try it out a lot, and it's all worked really fantastically, and that's why I like them so much. So maybe if Panda wanted to send us some stuff too, and we could verify that it works great, we'd be able to endorse it a little bit more enthusiastically. Wink, wink. Send us more stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's hard sometimes to find a really good wireless network adapter. We did a show one time where we bought 10 wireless network adapters off of Amazon. They were just no-name brandless ones that said that they were compatible. And we tried plugging them into a computer running Kali Linux, and at least 2 of them force rebooted the computer, and one of them damaged the operating system, which was amazing.
That was the second live stream we ever did, was testing all those adapters. And yeah, like you said, it was funny to watch all of the proven to work ones crash.
Yeah, most of them didn't work, and some of them actually seemed to damage the system. So when we opened them up also, a lot of them had tons of hot glue on the inside, lots and lots and lots of hot glue. So pretty frustrating for people who are trying to find a network adapter and then don't know that there's a curated list of them on, for example, Alpha Wireless.
Yeah. Okay, so I have another question here.
All right.
For the OMG cable, is there a proven to work USB-C to Lightning connector, for example? I don't have any experience with that. I have an Android phone, and most people around here have an Android phone, so I don't have access to an iPhone to test and play around with. However, if y'all do have any OMG cable questions, I highly encourage y'all to join the Hack5 Discord and go to the OMG section or the MG section. And they are always on there, and they'll always be able to help you with your questions. And if y'all really have a bunch of OMG related questions, let us know, and we can try to get him on here one week.
Hey, boom, we have an OMG related question on your video. So somebody was asking about whether or not you can take a exe file. Actually, it's over on my screen. Can I save an exe file onto the OMG cable and then make the cable's payload just run PowerShell and run the exe cable already saved on the cable? So use its ability to store a file to save a little binary and then run that. That way you can just bring your own malware.
I'm not 100% sure. I haven't played around with that aspect yet. But along similar lines, what you could do is you could save a payload to GitHub or some other page online, and then just have a PowerShell script or something like that that just grabs whatever payload from the internet and runs that file.
So MG himself responded to this and said, base 64 encoded binaries. It's a slightly more advanced technique, but pretty straightforward. Maybe Hackbyte, that's you, your Hackbyte. Maybe Hackbyte could cover that in future episodes. Hint, hint. So is that something you guys want to see? Do you want to see how you can base 64 encode a binary file and then run it with the OMG cable? Again, a little bit advanced, but if you are all asking for it, then we can absolutely show that. And Michael, you could learn from the man himself, and MG could show you how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will add it to the list of video ideas.
Also, a question: can you put a link for all these tools on Amazon, please? This isn't sold on Amazon. It's only through Hack5.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. You can't buy that. Trick question. Nice try.
And then for all I know, someone's trying to resell OMG cables on Amazon for like 3 times the price.
And the last question on this video is: so I have to buy a cable and a flasher. And there's 3 exclamation points, but I assume that is actually supposed to be 1 question mark.
Yeah, you'll need 1 flasher, but for n number of cables. So, yeah. So if you have nothing and you're starting off fresh, you do need to buy a flasher. But after you have the 1 flasher, you don't need any more because it has all the adapter types, so it can flash any of the OMG cables or plugs.
Cool. All right, what's the next question?
Let me go to the ones from previous videos.
All right, because otherwise I'm going to do the ones on your videos.
Okay, so this one is from our security forward video this one's on Hack5. Defeating facial recognition. Couldn't you just walk around with a bag on your head and 2 holes? So, yes.
Isn't that what a ski mask is?
Yeah.
But just tight?
You're just good. So, multiple points on that. There are certain AI algorithms that detect, face mask wearing or various face coverings and generate alerts based on those. For example, at DEF CON a couple years back, the furries got in a lot of trouble because they were defeating the facial recognition of the casino. I think it was Caesar's Palace that we were at. So security got really onto them because you couldn't track them, So sometimes those things cause more trouble than it's worth. In that video, what we were trying to do is find somewhat discrete methods to defeat facial recognition. For instance, IR LEDs. I don't think we actually got to test that one in that video for technical reasons.
I blew out 6 IR LEDs trying to test that. They RIP.
And then I think the exotic makeup, you could probably get away with just looking weird, but you wouldn't a ski mask or a bag over your head, someone's going to be calling the cops immediately thinking you're about to rob the place.
It really does depend how much police contact you're willing to have to prove a principle. If you're wearing just a big mask, that's one thing, but if you're wearing a full-on bag over your head, eventually someone's going to feel uncomfortable, and that's going to be your issue at a certain point. All right, so there's a question on your video about grabbing Wi-Fi passwords with the OMG cable. Someone says, would disabling PowerShell access to only local admin accounts prevent this scenario?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
One problem with that is doesn't this use CMD, or was that
one? So we used commands. So we didn't use we ran 2 PowerShell commands. But I don't know if they were using any admin level privileges. I'd have to go back and test it. I don't think that it would. But it's possible because basically what you're doing is, accessing that network backup. So it's possible that you might need admin level privileges to do that. But I did not test that.
A good question. A good
Yeah.
question. Also, someone's asked, "Where's Alex?"
Oh yeah, I have that question here too. He's currently not here.
Yeah, Alex is back in Los Angeles doing his own thing, preparing for his talk at Hope, hopefully. So I think his next big gig is going to be doing his presentation at the Hope conference in New York. So look forward to that soon. All right, what's up
Okay, next question. Yeah, sorry, I'm behind. Does Hack 5 deliver all around the world? Please answer. So if you go to hack5.org/compliance, you will see a page, and that page will tell you which countries we can and cannot deliver to, because Hack 5 products are considered a cyber weapon. We're not allowed to deliver to certain countries. So again, hack5.org/compliance. If you're not able to receive it in your country, sorry, we don't have control over that. Talk to your government and the U.S. government and get them to change ITAR compliance.
Yes, find your local lobbyist and give them $1 million to work on that problem.
Yeah, sorry, don't have a better answer for you.
All right, here's a pretty common one that we get. How to get started with hacking. Michael, what got you started with hacking?
Honestly, I would probably say like video game hacking and stuff like that kind of got me interested in the idea of hacking. I think, ironically, I remember when I was playing World of Warcraft as a kid and my account got hacked, and I was like, I want to know how they did this. I want to understand. I think that was definitely an element of piquing my interest, but I didn't really get started until I was like, I want to learn more about this. I want to do some like API hacking and learn how to reverse engineer some of these apps and games and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, where can I go learn about this? DEF CON. Like, this is where all the hackers go. I have basically zero knowledge. I know enough Python programming to get myself in trouble, and that's about it. So I went out to DEF CON, and it's all history from there, basically.
Oh, also, everybody, you can relax. Zam is here.
Sam!
Good. All right, we were a little worried, Zam. I'm glad you're with us in the stream. All right, I've answered this question many times. Poverty, I needed Wi-Fi so I could get a job. That's how I got started
Nice.
hacking. All right, so here's a question about security cameras. How can you / what's the first step to hack security cameras, let's say at a store, theoretically, that you would have permission, I'm assuming, to test, because otherwise it would be a crime, with basic login credentials? So, okay, let's assume for the sake of the scenario that it is a Wi-Fi camera. So it's connected to the store via a Wi-Fi network. Well, the first thing you could potentially do is disconnect the camera via deauthentication packets from the store's network, which would freeze the footage temporarily and also be able to allow you to hit the camera with a bunch of different Wi-Fi network names. So if it has ever been connected to any other network, or if you can force it to connect to your network, which has the same name as the store's network, then you can basically own the data connection of the camera and force it to connect to you. The next step would then be scanning that little network you've created, finding the camera which is connected to it, and then attempting to brute force the login or just log in using default credentials. And you would have basically isolated the camera off of its home network onto your man-in-the-middle network and then broken into the camera in order to see what it sees. If it's on a network and it's hardlined in, then your best bet is just trying to get into the network that it's connected to. So that might be a Wi-Fi network or something that could be vulnerable. And then from that network, you could scan the network, locate the camera on the network, and attempt to log into it. Of course, all of this would need to be with permission.
Yeah. So another question here is, how can you get a handshake from a hidden Wi-Fi network?
That's a good question. So hidden Wi-Fi networks are bad ideas because every device that uses them are shouting the name of the network constantly all the time. So generally, if you just wait by a hidden network for a device to connect to it, I mean, it will eventually attempt to like shout out its name, and you can intercept that and see exactly what's going on. I believe that it's possible to grab PMKID handshake, or like a hash of the password from a hidden network that is there, but not broadcasting. And again, a hidden network is basically just a network that's not beaconing. So it does all sorts of other stuff. Like if a device is connected to it, for example, it's very, very easy to see it and be aware that it's there. It's just not giving up its name. But if you just kick a device off of that network, it is forced to renegotiate the connection and has to share the name in that exchange. So I would say identifying a device that's connecting to it, kicking off a device that's currently connected to it, or attempting a PMKID style attack against the network would be 3 ways of trying to attack a hidden Wi-Fi network. But yeah, hidden networks are funny. They're funny little things that people think add security, but in fact make any device that's connecting to it constantly de-anonymize themselves by shouting out the name of that network and looking for it around them.
And continuing along that vein of Wi-Fi questions, is Wi-Fi 6/WPA3 hard to hack? Like, what security features does it offer?
Yeah, so WPA3 offers the ability to use what's called elliptic curve cryptography to define like a curve effectively in a formula and then pick different points on it and have that curve be the secret. So that's really cool because it allows different devices to, basically share the fact that they know what the underlying formula is by sharing points on that curve, but avoiding actually sharing the information that would be useful for cracking. So that's a really cool way of doing this. It really prevents weak passwords from being cracked easily, or at least it's supposed to do that. And that's a big step forward for example, WPA2, where it was extremely easy to crack weak passwords, and a password was really only as good as the user picking it and making sure that it's strong. So with WPA3, the promise is that this new type of cryptography is supposed to make it really easy to pick very, very secure passwords. So even if your password sucks, it should still be really, really difficult to crack it using WPA3. And that's like one of the biggest differences I think users will feel, is that they are protected from their own poor decisions when it comes to picking a bad password, because it will not be as easy to attack a Wi-Fi network that has a bad password if they're using WPA3.
I was going to say, and then if you go to my screen, I have the video pulled up. We did a video here on Hack 5 about that.
Oh, yeah.
Hacking WPA3. We actually had Matthew Van Hoff. Is that how you say his name? On, and he is like the expert in Wi-Fi hacking. He has a lot of really good papers if you really want to do a deep technical dive into how Wi-Fi hacking works. But if you want to watch that video, we interviewed him, talked about, as Kody was saying, the elliptic curve cryptography and those elements.
Yeah, and it's also resistant to deauthentication attacks. So it is much harder to kick people off of these networks. So interruption of service or denial of service attacks that used to be really easy are suddenly much more complicated and much more difficult with WPA3. So it is something that will definitely improve your security.
Cool.
So some people are debating about I think like the best operating system. I just want to show the winning comment, which is, it's not about the OS, it's your technique. I agree. Yeah,
okay.
no, it's I use Mac OS, I use Debian, I use Ubuntu, I use Kali, I use Paired Security OS, I use Manjaro. There's lots of different operating systems that I'll use. It really just depends what I'm doing on it in order to decide which one is the best.
So referencing the previous question we answered about routers. So yeah, usually you can identify routers by the MAC address. That's not always going to be the case, but I think it's the first 3 sets are the vendor, and that'll help you identify the chipset brand. There's also Routersploit. I don't know if that's still maintained, but that was a GitHub tool capable of scanning, finding the router, assessing what brand it was and all that, and then trying a bunch of common exploits against it. So that's worth looking into. Again, I don't know if it's been maintained, but that was several years ago that I remember using that.
All right, so this is more of a comment from Make It Hackin', who we actually met at RSA. So hello, I'm currently trying to find a way to fit your sticker on my new laptop. Make it a little smaller next time. I'm trying to fit it between some other ones. But hi. So the comment was, the first time I saw someone show me the name of my hidden network, I was like, what? Yeah. So if you've ever joined a hidden network before on your phone, it is always going to be shouting out the name of that network everywhere you go as long as your Wi-Fi is on, and even sometimes when it's not. So if I'm a hacker and I'm trying to track you, and you have connected to a very uniquely named hidden network, I will be able to track you anywhere, because even though your phone is doing all this work to try to hide who you are and hide your movements, it is also working against you to try to shout out for this network all the time. So hidden networks are a great way to de-anonymize yourself. If you've ever joined one in the past, you should delete it off of your phone. It is a very, very unprivacy friendly thing to do to your electronic devices, because it makes them just tag you with that name all the time as you're traveling.
And yes, Kody did do a nullbyte episode on routersploit.
I did. Yes, it was super cool. I used it to find a very serious vulnerability in the observatory on the what's that mountain at the Griffith Observatory?
No, Mount Wilson.
Mount Wilson Observatory. There you go.
Is it the one high up or the one in the middle of the city?
The high up one with
Wilson.
with the domes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Mount Wilson Observatory maybe should update their routers and such, because they've got some problems up there. But routersploit worked for me back when I wrote that article. So.
Can you de-auth on Wi-Fi 6? That has protected management frames, correct?
Yes, I believe so. So there's some techniques targeting beacons right now that would still work, I believe, in the current standard. The thing is, Wi-Fi is great because it's already fragmented. Mm-hmm. So the standard has been updated. So if it was the original version of, like WPA3, then some deauthentication attacks would actually still work. If they've been updated to protect against some of the attacks, like the beacon attacks that have come out, then it would not. So because different devices will have different versions of Wi-Fi, it's just funny to me that some of these things actually will still, even though they have been fixed, not be rolled out to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's what you were kind of just saying, is like, because they need to still support legacy devices, oftentimes they remain vulnerable to other attacks. And so another question I have here is, do you think everything is hackable? Do you want to answer this?
Yeah, I think that anything that allows input in some way, shape, or form is probably hackable. And there's a lot of different ways of going about this. Everything from fuzzing, where you're just sending a bunch of random input and seeing what happens, all the way through looking at the manual and seeing if there's a way that you can do something that wasn't intended for it to be done. And that's really like the definition of hacking, is like getting something to do something it was never intended to do by the people who made it. And I think that is possible with just about anything.
Yeah, basically the same thing. I would say that humans are inherently fallible, and so anything humans code or make is inherently going to have some weakness in it. So going back to questions from previous videos, give me just a second. Okay, I wonder what percentage of OMG cables are used by IT professionals or in legitimate use cases versus how many are used to steal money from unsuspecting people. It's a covert device designed, and so you do take any measures to protect people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, it's your video.
I think the OMG cable is probably... MG would probably have a better answer to this, but I think it's probably predominantly used by pen testers, people who want to have it around to show their friends and to look cool. I think if you're an IT professional, it can make sense, but also there's other similar devices that, though the OMG plug might be better for IT professionals. I do know a lot of IT professionals will use it, especially when you have very redundant, repetitive tasks that you need to do. As far as protecting myself against, I actually do not do as good as I should. Because, like I said, I've accidentally plugged it in a number of times. So we've now reached a stage where it's just going to have a little sticker on it. But I know that is not a long-term solution. I know Nick did a video previously on disabling your USB ports to better protect your devices, and various hardware you can use to always plug in cables. But the way I work here in video production, it's just not practical to have that for... I can barely keep track of all the HDMI cables I need. The last thing I need to do when I'm struggling to get a live stream started is to, be fooling around with that stuff.
All right, so one comment, sort of question. Tips on what kinds of fun stuff you could do with the router with OpenWRT. Ooh. So I'm taking that more as a challenge of what's the craziest thing you've seen someone do with a router and OpenWRT? And that would have to be this over on my screen. So for a while, the CIA was infecting routers with this crazy, I guess it's spyware in the truest form, where it would allow them to use the router as like a monitoring device and be able to like see when people were coming and going, which devices were on the network. It would be able to also deliver different malicious packages to browsers via just drive-by downloads, where it would just automatically download it and try to run it. So it really gave them a lot of flexibility over being able to target people via this cherry web and cherry tree infrastructure. So they would connect to a VPN, be able to connect to these various infected routers directly, and then use the flytrap device and target these normal users / targets with all sorts of malicious actions. So pretty crazy that the CIA was basically turning other people's routers into advanced signals intelligence spying devices and doing things like scanning all the wireless traffic around them to detect when a certain person was there, or even doing things like trying to infect specific computers with malicious programs to escalate what they could do in terms of tracking or breaking into that person's stuff. So the answer is a lot. I've seen a lot of crazy things with OpenWRT because this was all based on OpenWRT and specifically a fork of it called Tomato.
Over on my screen, I have my favorite project, which is Pirate Box. I believe it is now a defunct project, but in its heyday, basically it was an anonymous offline file sharing service that you could run on OpenWrt. And essentially you could upload files. It would host like a forum. So the idea was, you'd leave this somewheres, and then anyone that walks by could use their phone or other wireless device to connect to it, drop photos. That you could use it, if you're on a long backpacking trip and you just leave it in camp, and then as people come by during the day, they can leave messages for each other, stuff like that. I thought it was a really cool, novel use case.
All right, we've got a question from Zam. Do you know of a Ducky script that can pull the host USB ID?
Sorry, I was clicking away.
Do you know of a Ducky script that can pull the host USB ID?
I'm sure that exists. Do I know it off the top of my head? No.
So this would probably be in order to like clone the USB ID, or otherwise make it so that it would be difficult to be able to detect that a foreign cable was plugged into the computer. The USB ID is supposed to identify, what the cable is, basically, and tell the host computer how to treat it. So if it spoofs a USB ID of another device, then it would be able to remain more invisible.
Okay, so here's another good question. Basically, it's asking about, is it easier to social engineer versus trying to find an exploit in a machine? And I would say it depends on your target. If, like, high-profile targets or targets that understand their threat models and understand cybersecurity, it's definitely going to be easier to social engineer. But if you're talking about like your local donut shopper, something like that, a lot of those systems are still relatively what I would consider insecure. Keeping that in mind, I think the human element is always going to be the most vulnerable element because humans.
Again. Sorry, the RSA conference, the theme was the human element, and it's like gotten in everyone's head. Every time someone says the theme of the RSA conference, I have to get them with that. Sorry, go on.
But yes, I believe the human element is always going to be the most vulnerable because humans are inherently trusting of each other in most environments. And so, if your poor, pitiful little Michael needs help getting connected to your Wi-Fi, you just want to help him, and then you give me your Wi-Fi password, right? So that sort of thing, I think social engineering is always a good thing to learn.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to organizations and pen testing, once you identify the key people who are in charge of stuff, it's almost always easier to social engineer them than it is to try to break into their system, because you don't need to know anything about their system in order to social engineer them half the time. So if the point is just being able to break in and prove that you broke in, then like often social engineering attacks can by far be the easiest ones to do and some of the least detectable. So I would say social engineering is such a powerful tool. It's always worth keeping within your scope, because if you're somebody who doesn't like to get up from behind their computer and interact with people, then it's going to put you at a disadvantage from people who are willing to make a phone call, and lie. And if someone's willing to make a phone call and lie and they can get the result they want, instead of spending, you know, thousands of dollars and whatever on like trying to find this like super technical exploit, then I would say they more efficiently and effectively did hack that business than somebody who's using technical exploits.
Okay. Going back to the questions from previous videos.
We have got a question. How does one reach you privately, Kody? Message me on Twitter, but I don't always reply if it's like a bad idea or like if I don't want to. So if you have like work for me, or if you have like a problem you would like a technical problem with your computer you'd like me to have a look at, I'm not going to read it because I get hundreds of those. I'm so sorry. So if you've got like a caper of some sort, then I'm unfortunately busy. But if you're just wanting to say hello, like I do reply to those sometimes, and sometimes I even make TikToks of me replying to some of the personal messages I get. Of course, if it's something private, I would not do that. It's just generally the ones inviting me to like hack people's spouses for a very small amount of money, or otherwise commit some sort of crime.
Yeah. Okay, so along the lines of Wi-Fi hacking, we have another Wi-Fi related question here, which is, it was on the video, what Wi-Fi hacking tools do hackers use? And this person commented, most people don't change their router passwords anyway. Why not just make a tool to brute force the router default passwords? Do you know of a tool that does that? Because that seems like something that would already exist.
Well, okay, so you're talking about trying to like default to
log
the
in
router password once you're already connected to the Wi-Fi network. So in this scenario, you have the Wi-Fi password, but you want to gain the administrator access password for the router. Is that correct?
I think they're neglecting that fact, but we will just proceed under that assumption.
Okay, so the reason why there's no one tool that does that, or there's no one tool that does it well, is because every different router is going to have a different way of logging in. Some of them are going to be encrypted. Some of them are not going to be encrypted. Most of them are not going to be encrypted. Some of them are going to use HTTPS. Some of them, most of them are not. Because you don't know what the like submit button is going to be titled or what JavaScript is going to be powering the login. There's no way to know what the login process looks like, or for example, if there's brute forcing protection. So I personally will use OWASP Zap to attempt to log into the router, look for vulnerabilities in the way that it implements each step of authentication, and then try to find a way to set up OWASP Zap to brute force it from a list. So Burp Suite or OWASP Zap are my preferred ways of doing this. I would say that they're by far the most effective ways of doing this, because unfortunately there's no one script that's going to do that, because every login page is different. It's going to be at a different address. It's going to have different like things that you need to fill out in order for it to submit properly. It could have cookies that need to be sent along with it. Otherwise, it gets dropped. There's so many little things that can go wrong that's why there's no one tool that will do that for you. It's more of a skill you need to learn using a more ubiquitous tool like OWASP Zap or Burp Suite.
Okay. So another question here. Are we going to ever do more reactions to Mr. Robot? Short answer, not likely. Longer, extensive answer is... First of all, we've used up a lot of the clips from Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot isn't as bad as some of the other movies, but we still have to go through a copyright nightmare of appealing and justifying why this is fair use. So I just don't like doing that, so no. Yeah, so basically, we've used most of the clips already. We try to use only clips that are publicly available on YouTube, so we're not like spoiling things too much or anything like that. And it's a copyright nightmare, so no.
All right, to answer all the questions about Hack5 products, I work with Alex on the Wi-Fi Nugget and the USB Nugget, so I can answer a question about those two things, but for everything else, Hack5, unfortunately, I am not privy to the secret, so unfortunately, I cannot tell you when the Hack5 Elite Field Kit or the USB Rubber Ducky or anything else is going to be back in stock. Those are secrets and mysteries to me as well. So, sorry about that. Another question from our dear user, Balls Deep Gaming Community. Good to see you back. What? Everyone's welcome. Okay. So the question is, do you have an alternative platform in case you get removed from YouTube? No. I mean, kind of, sort of. Like, we have a TikTok, but like our stuff gets taken down there even more. So a lot of people have told us to make either like an alternative account or go onto like one of these like censorship resistant like platforms, but frankly every time I go to one of them I see a bunch of stuff that like is spreading misinformation or like hateful material, and I don't want to put our content up there. So while YouTube definitely has its problems, we've been able to escalate things and get real people to take a look at our channel and realize what it is we're trying to do. Hack 5 in particular has been around forever, but Security Forward has not. So on the Security Forward channel, if you haven't checked it out, it's Security FWD. That is where we also do our Friday stream, and where we have tried to do, for example, the Hackers React, and ended up getting our stuff almost taken down. So that was very scary, and definitely kind of burned us for a little bit. But no, we currently don't really have a platform that on the back burner for if we were to be taken off YouTube, which is kind of spooky, right? But like, where would we find you guys? Like, let us know. Like, you know, if you have a suggestion, maybe we'll consider it.
Okay, and because we have to answer this question every time, and I promise we're going to do a video on this at some point. I just haven't gotten us around to it. What happened to nullbyte?
Oh yeah, Michael, feel free to answer this one.
Nullbyte is not in business anymore. Or, well, I wonder how to. So, nullbyte is under Wonder How To. Wonder How To decided to axe nullbyte. We worked for nullbyte, and they decided to stop buying our content, so no more nullbyte is the short answer. They were having trouble figuring out how to properly monetize their assets, and yeah, so they went under.
Okay, my turn. So we all worked for a company called Wonder How To, and Wonder How To had a section of their website called Nullbyte. I was the editor of that section, and I was like, hey, I'm going to make videos because I think it's going to do better than the articles. And they were like, no, don't do that. And I was just like, what? I didn't hear you. And just made 2 anyway for free. So the videos did pretty well. They started ending up paying us begrudgingly to do these episodes. And we built a team around it and ended up making a huge, huge channel that's actually still bigger than Hack 5, which is very funny to me because it's still a very young channel. And I started it by accident. Yes, around the time of the pandemic starting, they stopped ordering episodes from us and then decided that they wanted to sell off the nullbyte section of things. But even though at least 3 of our friends and also Veronis have attempted to purchase it for a very reasonable price, they have resisted. And the content is just sitting there getting older and older and more stale. So it's really sad to see all that work that we put in just kind of sitting there. But frankly, they're asking for more than $500,000 for the channel of stuff that like a lot of it doesn't even work anymore because it's been such a long time and it hasn't been updated. So if you're wondering why it hasn't been updated, it's because the channel was owned by Wonder How To. They are doing some sort of floundering and trying to find someone to buy it, but they're not taking any reasonable offers, even though people are trying to buy it. In fact, our friend Marcus, Malware Tech, like attempted to even like look at buying it and just got a ridiculous response. So hopefully in the future, maybe somebody would be interested in picking it up for a reasonable price, and that the people who currently own it would be willing to sell.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Wi-Fi hacking this episode. So final question, I think, time-wise. How do I defend myself against someone possibly using a pineapple or malicious item like that and attacking my home Wi-Fi network? Yeah, that's the summation of the question.
So Alex actually recently did a video on detecting Wi-Fi pineapples. My favorite way of doing this is by default, the Wi-Fi pineapple will create any network that it sees devices looking for. So if you just create a ridiculous network that has never existed and program it into your device and have your device try to join that network, if you suddenly see that network appear in your local area, somebody's running an attack or there's a pineapple nearby. That's called a karma style attack, where it listens for a device blasting out this name and then creates a device with the same name, hoping to lure that person into connecting to that access point automatically. So that's my personal favorite way of detecting whether or not there's a Wi-Fi pineapple or Wi-Fi attacks going off in the area.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, don't forget defense in depth. You know, do things like segment your network, so put all the vulnerable IoT devices on their own thing, and more secure devices on their own VLAN. You know, use WPA3 as much as you can, and force devices to use WPA3. Use a long, secure password. If you really want to go hardcore, use WPA3 Enterprise with like a secure certificate and all of that, but that's going to make joining the network a little difficult. And I actually lied about being the last question. The last question is, he still doesn't blink?
No, I still don't. I mean, I've learned to, you know, like put on the appearance of a blink. So hopefully you guys enjoy this new acting that I've done. I've done a lot of coaching in order to get the blinking up to par. I think it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
Actually, it looks like, wow, there's a fierce bidding war for nullbyte in the comments.
Oh.
I can see somebody is offering $200 for the nullbyte channel. And then follow up, looks like another person has outbid them with $1.250 for nullbyte. So it looks like Craig Buckner might be the new owner of nullbyte. We'll see how this bidding war shakes out.
Nice.
Eventually, we could have an attractive new owner of the nullbyte channel and get started. All right, so I think there was one question I wanted to answer, and it was, here it is. How long does it take to learn hacking? I have a little bit of experience in programming. It took me about 2 or 3 years to feel comfortable, like writing a really rough proof of concept in order to like use some Python or use some C++ in order to make something that does the thing based on something that someone else did. Writing something completely from scratch is still hard for me, but I would say like 2 to 3 years of learning about computer science, learning about programming, learning about networking will all be enough to get you to a point where you're pretty comfortable talking about hacking stuff and doing hacking stuff.
I would add a little nuance to that, because like when I started learning hacking, it was mainly around reverse engineering APIs or taking advantage of APIs and stuff like that using Python. And using Python, accessing some APIs like drawing and gathering data that I shouldn't have access to and stuff like that. Legally with permission. It only took me a couple weeks of like stumbling around. The main trouble for me was like learning the right questions to ask, but once you figured out the right questions to ask, then it was actually pretty simple. So I think you can get started with some really basic stuff even faster than a couple of years. But I agree, like, if you really want to learn and get started knowing what you're talking about, 2 or 3 years probably be a reasonable time frame.
All right. I think that's all we have time for. People are now offering food items for nullbyte, the channel. So I think this bidding war is getting too hot. So we are going to go for this time. But if you didn't get your question answered, make sure to drop it on the YouTube channel. That's security FWD, or you can leave it on the Hack5 video as well, and we will make sure to answer it on the next stream. Per always, a big shout out to Veronis for letting us do this Q&A stream every week, and generally just letting us get together with our friends and do the Hacking with Friends show. Really super cool that we get to do this with all of you and get to check in with all you nerds every week. So shout out to Veronis. We'll see you hopefully on our Friday stream where we might have a very special guest. Isn't that right, Michael?
Yes, I do think we will have a very special guest, which is definitely not me, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. So it looks like we may be able to get Serena, aka She Networks, on for a Q&A session. Still confirming, so it's a little bit rough still, but on Friday we might have a very special guest who I just said exactly who it is on to answer some questions. So instead of our normal Friday news stream, you might see a second Q&A stream this week. Just on account of, having someone very cool and special on the stream. So we will see you hopefully on Friday. Thank you to everybody who was on the stream today that asked excellent questions. And of course, Zam. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.